guys, welcome back to the shop. While we have multiple projects, as always, going on here, it is time to start making some hammers. Alright, it's time for some blacksmithing. Go ahead and grab a cup of coffee, cup of tea, or whatever you drink, depending on what time of day or time of week it is. And let's make some hammers here. So I've got this 2.5 inch round stock 1045 steel, and it weighs a little bit. So cut it into manageable chunks here with the portaband saw, which is, as far as I know, humanly impossible to actually get a straight cut with. So went ahead and cut off a little piece so we can start with a good straight bit there. And we'll start cutting up some stock. So I went ahead and figured out with a steel weight calculator, you can Google that and look it up. Put in your dimensions, and then it'll tell you the weight. So I have all these different sizes of stock for the different weights of hammers that people ordered. Using the big forge, of course, so that we can run more than one or two. So the first step here is to turn this into square bar. And you could start with square bar, but it is a little more difficult to come by, and as I understand it, often more expensive. So the round bar it is, and turning it into square bar is not too terribly difficult with the proper equipment. Now, of course, this 2.5 inch stock is really too wide for the smaller weights of hammers, so you have to not only turn it into square, but narrow it down and lengthen it at the same time to get the appropriate dimensions for the hammer. So the week I was working on these, it was like 105 degrees or something like that. So this is some punch lube that I made, and it is beeswax that I heated up to liquid and then put as much graphite powder into it as it would basically hold. So it basically turned it into a paste, even though it was still hot enough to be liquid. But that's how much graphite I put into it, which is not a precise measurement, but there it is. I also added probably 3 tablespoons of WD-40 when the wax was liquid, and I was trying to get the viscosity up, which wasn't really necessary, and I would dispense with that the next time I make it. But I will say the punch lube works great, and here I'm just carefully starting the eye, starting to punch the eye here, make sure that it's going in straight, it's even, and where it needs to be. But you can see that there's no sticking whatsoever. And of course the punch isn't very far in, but right there, as you can see, punch all the way down, and it pops right off, no problem. Much different than using the punch dry. So big improvement. And all these little things when you're when you're trying to make multiple pieces in a small production manner, it really helps, and also helps your tooling last a lot longer as well. So here I'm drifting the eye on these hammer blanks using this small drift, and going through these hammers here. So once I use my short drift on the press, I'll go ahead and drift out the eye more with the full size drift. I'm still figuring out how to do everything in a completely efficient manner, and I haven't completely figured it out yet, but I guess the more hammers I make, the more I'll figure that out, obviously. I did make these tongs recently. They're a pickup style tong, and they're really nice for using for this kind of stuff. So here I'm adjusting the eye, and this is a very handy trick. It's not really a trick, it's just how you work with a hammer. But you have to, if the eye is sort of cockeyed, you can knock it back into shape, of course, with the drift not in the hammer, and it's very effective as far as getting things back in line. And right here I'm trying to adjust the eye front to back. It's cockeyed, and that's also effective. Would be a little easier with a longer drift right here. I need to make a new one, but you know, those are things that you correct as you go on the hammers. And sometimes, you know, sometimes the eye doesn't come out completely straight, but you can correct that. So you just keep an eye on that. No pun intended. So putting in the little fullers here around the hammer, isolating the faces a little bit more. This is kind of tricky because it tends to close the eye back up, and on the smaller hammers, these fullering dies are a little bit too big, but they'll get the job done. You just have to be careful and work with the eye a little bit more. And so then we'll go ahead and open the eye back up and bring our hammer dimensions back to closer to what they should be, what they were originally, since we kind of stretch it out. So again, like I said, I'm still working on figuring out how to do everything in the most efficient manner. Like right here, I have to redrift the eye, which is not super efficient. So figuring out how to do everything in the proper steps, but it's all part of the process. So now I need to forge the rounded portion of the hammer here, which is what I'm doing. And again, a longer drift would be better. So this batch of hammers are all numbered 1 through 7, and the first one I stamped with the number. I smashed my thumb. That's not on camera, which is probably good because I said some bad words, hopped around a little bit. Those little number stamps are not conducive to using over hot steel, especially hot steel of this size. It radiates a little bit, shall we say. So now that we have the hammers forged out, we need to normalize them, and these hammers are thrice normalized. Maybe that's excessive, I don't know, but I want to provide a good product. So normalizing is where you heat it up to critical temperature, which is a sort of vague term that depends on the particular steel, but in this case we're looking at about 1500 to 1550, and it looks hotter than it is in the camera. But then you let that cool in still air, and that refines your grain structure. Well, first of all, it relieves the stresses that we created during the forging process, and then it helps refine the grain structure. Obviously, that's not as important on a tool like a hammer, but it's still important because you want the steel to hold up under use and literally have, you know, the lifetime of several users at least. So we've got these hammers normalized, and of course now it's time to heat treat, which includes hardening and then tempering. So I'm going to do these one at a time for the quenching to harden it here, because I have to pay attention to the evenness of the heat even more than with the normalizing. So I've got a good even heat on that, and we'll do a water quench here. And especially with a large chunk of steel like this, you have to agitate the workpiece in the quench vigorously, in the water vigorously, because it creates a vapor jacket, a vapor barrier at those high heats, and it will actually retard the cooling process, which is not what we want, especially with a simple carbon steel like this. This is not a deep hardening steel. It hardens just fine in water, if done properly, of course, and so that's why we're doing it this way. But it's important, it's necessary to heat treat this, of course, otherwise you would have a soft and squishy hammer, which really would sort of defeat the purpose. So we'll go ahead and get these tempered, and then they'll be ready to move on to the next step. So after tempering, fully heat treated, I'll go ahead and wire brush the entire hammer off, and that removes most of the scale and cleans up the surface of the steel and sort of brings out all that attractive forging, forged surface. And so I'm working on the next couple of hammers in this batch, and so we'll see some of the processes that I didn't show initially. But that was my Maker's Mark stamp. So having a nice bold Maker's Mark stamp, something that I like, and that one in particular is almost an inch around. So we'll get this next batch forged out here, and you'll see me doing things a little bit differently here, because like I said, I'm trying to learn how to refine the process and do things not have to repeat any steps. Does that make sense? Like I was kind of doing the last time around. So I'm not there yet, but it's all part of learning how to do this. So we'll get this punched out, a little different view here, a little different angle. Drop the drift on the ground. So you can see here I'm kind of holding this at an angle and getting that drifted in straight, because sometimes it doesn't always start straight, but you can correct that on the press by tipping it the right way. Alright, so pressing down the cheeks there, and then pressing down on the faces, and that I learned that allows the drift to come right out most times, which eliminates a step of having to drive the drift back out on the swage block. So anyway, we've got those all forged out, heat treated, wire brushed, and we'll use the die grinder to clean up the eye a little bit on the edge. We don't want a sharp edge there. We don't want anything that's going to dig into the handle, create a stress point. So those are nicely rounded off. These are all ready to grind the faces on. So I'm using the drift here to check and make sure that I'm grinding the faces in line with the eye, where the handle is going to run. That's the most important. The surfaces on these hammers, or the sides on these hammers and stuff, are not, they're forged, they've got some contours and stuff. And so what you want is the faces of your hammer to line up with the handle, with the axis of the handle. That's what's important here. So get these ground down. It's also important to get all the decarburized steel, that decarb layer off of there, of course, so you're down to good heat-treated steel. And I'm finishing it up here on a 220 grit belt, and then I do some wire brushing, which I didn't actually film. But now it's time to put some handles on. So I've got hickory wood planks here, and so obviously we're making the handles from scratch, and that's necessary because you can't get a good store-bought handle. Not that you would want to necessarily anyway, but it all has to be handmade. So we'll get each and every hammerhead matched to its own handle very specifically, and using the belt grinder here to grind down the eye area, and then we'll fit everything to the hammerhead, making sure that everything lines up, that everything is perpendicular as we drive it in, and take off a little bit of material here and there so that it goes into the eye of the hammer. That draw knife was my great-granddad's, one of his draw knives, little folding job there. But use that to get into the little bit tighter radius than the belt grinder 10-inch wheel can do. Clean that up with the rasp a little bit. It allows the hammerhead to seat down on there like it needs to. So we just kind of check it and take off a little bit of material as needed. So then I go ahead and shape the handles, mostly with the hammerhead on there, so that I'm shaping it to the dimensions or to the orientation of the hammer and everything. So we'll take that off there to finish it up, but it's all completely custom to each hammer. Use a slack belt here to round off the hammer handle and do a little more sanding here. So we're ready to go ahead and cut the kerf for the wedge, and just making sure that it lines up with the center. I like to use, typically I like to use black walnut for the wedges, mostly because of the way it looks. It's a neat contrast to that dark wedge there. Obviously you can use hickory or, you know, different things. Some guys use, I think, poplar, but I like black walnut. It works well, looks neat. So we'll drive the handle on for the final time here. Make sure everything is lining up the way it needs to. Seat that down all the way. And we'll put some wedges in here. Use some wood glue to help hold it in there. I'm using my 4.5 pound forging hammer with that, and I found that wide face actually kind of works really well to drive the wedges, so you can contact the entire top surface of that wedge when you're driving it in. It seemed to work pretty well. You just drive that down as far as it will go, you know, and you can tell when it's not going to go any further, and at that point you just leave it, because it'll just start cracking and breaking. So then we'll, once we get these all wedged up, we'll trim off the wedges, clean up the end of the handle, and then carefully not to grind the hammerhead, and then chamfer off that corner with my knife. And that's partly for looks, but partly to give a stronger corner in case you drop the hammer or something, like you don't want to cause a crack to start, whatever. So they're all good to go. Get some linseed oil on these, and some of the orders called for a flame blackened handle, so we'll do that. And I thought of Torbjorn, or the Swedish blacksmith on YouTube here, when I was dumping in this linseed oil, because he uses linseed oil and everything too. So kind of fun. But I poured it all back into the jug, so it's mostly all saved. Yeah, there's my redneck reclamation station. A little precarious there, but gets the job done, I guess. Well, I appreciate you guys watching. Hopefully it was entertaining and maybe learned something. If you're interested in getting one of these hammers, stay tuned to the channel. I'll be announcing pre-orders opening in the near future. As always, thanks for watching, and we'll see you on the next video.